Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of TBR, and I'm George Binns. And we're continuing the discussion of what's the state of the city. And to help us understand it, we have with us this evening Kathleen Feldman, the City Councilor from Ward 5. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And I guess the mayor had his pitch about a week or so ago of what he thinks and different people have. What do you think the city is about, and where's it going, and where do you think it should be going?
I think the city as a whole is very much on the upswing. It's continuing its upward trajectory, I really think. We have been working very hard for the last several years that I've been in office, I know, to establish some framework and infrastructure to really help get in line some of those design review standards and some of the building, the zoning that will support the development of housing and affordable housing, but at a rate that more matches what our constituents and the citizens of Beverly want. And along with that, we have been, moving at a much more rapid pace than many other communities in terms of sustainability and green infrastructure. And that is one of my top priorities because it affects all aspects of our life, and I not only think it's the right thing to do for the future of our children and our community and our earth and our world at whole, I also think it's actually good business to be able to have the new buildings that we're building net zero, to be able to retrofit something like the library, to preserve that historic aspect of Beverly and the character that we have, and to change all these buildings to make them modern at a savings to the city is just, I'm just thrilled with the direction that the city is going in right now. And also some of the projects that got kicked down the road are actually being picked up again.
Like, for instance?
Phase 2.
Yeah.
The Brimble Avenue overpass has been long talked about for over almost at least 20 years now,
Yeah.
I believe, after going door to door back in 2019 in that area. It's really been, it's at a place where I think it is further along than it ever has been before, which I am so hopeful about, and we are really investing a lot of resources. We just had a vote to kind of be in the to transfer the money to make that investment on the part of the city into that final push for the infrastructure that or the planning that we are able to create, because it's really a MassDOT project because it's 128. Yeah. So it's really excited.
There's an overpass over 128 to relieve some of the traffic on Dunham Road and to open up that area just south of Norwood Pond. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions I always had is, why not just extend Dunham Road further east until you hit Essex Street and use the Essex Street entrance? So one of the concerns I have is that we make a project so complicated and expensive and get the state so much involved that it just takes forever. I mean, we've seen this with the two bridges that are out. And that the state is getting involved, and we got to get another permit, and we got to get all these different organizations to agree. And I think the mayor mentioned during his version of the state of the city that in about the end of the month, we will be maybe 25% of the way into having a set of plans for replacing the bridges. And they've been out for 5-6 months already. And so I guess my concern is how do we get the city more involved in doing things that we can do and not just end up with, well, we're waiting on the state. Or the one that really irritated me on the bridges is, well, we could have put a Bailey Bridge in like they did on I-95 years ago, but it's not that critical. And it's hard to tell the people that are living in that area that, oh, the bridge is down, it's not that bad. And, so, and I think that's the same story that Dunham Road is facing, that the traffic getting out of what's there now, and especially when they have something at the music theater, it's just something they have to put up with and have been putting up with for years.
Right, and that, it's not all roses.
Yeah,
the bridges, I completely, that is a project that should have been further ahead on the docket. I think it caught the state, the city at all levels off guard with how badly deteriorated it was. And, we're doing everything we can now in a triage sense to be able to try and push it ahead. But when it comes to, I think, the planning for Phase 2 and the overpass, it's a dance because it's not our project. So we've had many meetings, the mayor, his administration, and the state with engineers from MassDOT, just to make sure what we're putting money into is what they want to see, because they don't have to accept it if it's something that we propose. So we're certainly not putting good money after bad if we're queuing this up to be exactly what they're looking for. And one of the not problems, because incredibly grateful for the Norwood Pond trails and network and everything that's protected back there. But when it comes to the exit 18, or I don't know what exit it is now, but the Essex Street exit, which is the one exit north currently from that Dunham exit, or the Brimble exit, you are looking at possible wetland implications.
Yeah.
And Dunham Road, I think that it's likely if you kick the can down the road a little bit between the wetland complications, the private property that we would have to incorporate that is owned by different parcels are owned by different people, and then additionally, then we might be creating the same issue that Dunham's having at the Essex Street exit. So what we are looking at right now in terms of the location and where it would be in our proposal that we hope is accepted is what MassDOT is looking for. Yeah. So we're really trying to tailoring our pitch, for lack of a better
well, they're the
way
ones paying for it, so you got to accommodate.
We want to give the customer what they want.
Yeah.
So and the constituents are my customers, so getting it done is what I need to do. So what I am pushing to do is get it done however MassDOT wants it to get done.
Yeah, that's one of the important things is get it done now.
Right.
Instead of keep talking about it because this goes back to, at least to my recollection, to Scanlon's administration.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
They had a set of plans back then, and I don't know what happened to them, but things never happened.
Right.
Never got to be poured concrete. Yeah. So, and the other thing that comes out of this, I think, is when this bridge set of exits and on-ramps gets converted into something of reality, there's going to be an opportunity to develop that area a bit more commercially. Mm-hmm. Cummings Center, or Cummings Company, is working in that area already. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure the music tent will last, but it might. Same thing
I hope
with
so.
The other areas around there. But one of the other things that keeps coming up is we talked in the city about we got to have a vibrant downtown. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of emphasis on a walkable city and a lot of small stores and restaurants and coffee shops and access to the train station and all this good stuff, the TOD. But at the same time, what I think is missing is that we also need to have a vibrant commercial operation. And in reality, Ward 3 has the Cummings Center. Ward 5 has got the airport and Cherry Hill and the surrounding areas. So how do you get some emphasis on that kind of an area in this environment of TOD and the vibrant community?
So that ties into why I've been pushing so hard for this phase 2 to become a reality, because on the one hand, of course, I want to get this for the residents of Dunham in that area. But on the other hand, additionally, I can't in good faith support any more development and industrial project back in industrial zoned land back on Dunham Ridge when we don't have the correct infrastructure in place to
you can't
support it.
The infrastructure.
And so, my original pitch to the state when we were talking about this is it is a barrier to economic development for the city. Like, not having an actual access to an office park that could be much larger than it is now. It's already, home to a lot of the biotech. It could be so much more, and it could bring so much more in terms of that corporate tax base to Beverly if we could have that barrier removed. Because I don't think anyone even working at the Cummings Center, the Dunham Ridge Cummings Center, would try and think that how they would get to work off of 128 coming through this little residential neighborhood with a cluster of different ons and off ramps at the Brimble Dunham entrance is a good way to get to start your day. It's not the right way to get to an actual center for economic for commerce.
It limits Cummings to what they can sell because the city can't provide the infrastructures to access a valuable resource.
Right.
And I think the other part of these games is it's not only that, the same thing is true of Cherry Hill. To get to most of that area, you've got to come off on
97 or Kona.
Well, you can't get on and off 97 from 128 very easily.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So you've got to get off on either Route 1 or Route 62. Route 62 is already a challenge. We go shopping on Tuesdays and about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and cars are still backed up on 128 trying to get off onto Route 62, Elliott Street, to get into town. So there's a lot of valuable resources, land that is already properly zoned in Beverly that you just can't get to.
Right.
And Fowler Hill is another area that's part. I guess it's part of your.
It's part of Ward 1, actually.
Ward 1's.
That's bizarre, but
yeah. Okay, but the access to it comes off 128.
Yep.
And there's been a discussion about more development in that area, but it bogs down. And what are you going to do about the traffic? And I think this was also the situation relative to the Bass River overlay. It's great to be able to develop that area. It's right next to the train station, all that good stuff. But what are you going to do about the traffic when you add a couple of hundred new condos or apartments in that area?
Right.
So this, I think, is one of the things that needs to be thought out and worked on a lot more than some other things that keep the city council engaged.
Well, given that it's a state project and I'm on it, I'm on at least this area, and I try and stay as on top of all of the, most of the, other than the Cummings Center in Ward 3, the lion's share of the industrially zoned places that people go to buy things or work in Beverly are in Ward 5.
Yeah.
Their airport, San Fonso Drive, the entire shopping centers, Commodore Plaza, and Dunham Ridge. And so that is really, you don't see it up on the council
No,
on TV, but trust it, I'm telling everyone right here, right now, like there's lots of meetings that are one-offs, that are with just specific residents, and there's lots of more boring stuff happening behind the scenes,
Yeah.
which
well, that's what it comes down to. It's
Right.
behind the scenes. And again, like you started earlier on, the state controls so much of this in terms of access.
right,
That we've got this resource, the land, the zoning has already been worked out, and trying to get the access to it. Route 62 is a prime example that, yeah, the state helped finance widening it, but they didn't make it 4 lanes. We got bicycle lanes on either side. So that, yeah, it's nice to have access for the bicycles, but at the same time, you get on Route 62 at the wrong time of the day, and it's a long, narrow parking lot.
right,
And so this access is getting to be a serious concern in lots of places besides Dunham Road and Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill, you got to get on 97, and you can't get there from 128.
right,
So this really makes it a challenge to develop these resources. And one of my kicks is to have what I call a complete city, which I usually start off with everybody that works in Beverly ought to be able to live here, which
Right.
gets you into the housing that is affordable, as opposed to affordable housing, which meets the state requirements. And it would be nice to expand that into saying that anybody that lives in Beverly can work in Beverly.
right.
And,
Agreed.
and your area is where it's going to happen.
Right, and there are there's some things that are in the really developing stage that I won't speak to directly, but I do know it is a priority of all of the counselors as well as the administration to find a way to produce that affordable housing. Hopefully we'll have more on that soon. And then the other aspect of that is we are really working towards, I'm not sure what the next steps are, but we would really like to see ADUs as part of the plan, because in a place like Ward 5, that is exactly the type of development that would maintain the types of neighborhoods we have, like Raymond Farms and up in North Beverly and a lot of the area around the school. There's lots of homes and properties that have the right setup to have an ADU, which would allow, some of the older people in our community to age in place in a way, but also make the housing stock for younger families available. And I have one constituent that's that asks me every couple of months, like, so where are we at with the ADUs, because their mother is living with them in the house and they would really like to build on their property, under the right code and everything to make sure it's zoned properly. And so that's really the next step in terms of what we can do and what we really want to see happen. Because for the most part, I believe, it has council support. So we're really working out the details, I think, because I think that's a really great tool in our toolkit for affordable housing. I'm not saying it's the best, it's the only
No, it's not the
solution,
only
but
solution.
it's a tool that we can easily add to that toolkit to be able to provide that as one of the options, because there's a lot of older people I know that do not want to leave their house that they raised their family in. So
I guess, and again, having an alternate housing unit on your property gets to be somewhat challenging in a lot of these areas, because the lots are not zoned for
right.
very large lots. So where do you hang it?
Well, some of the misconception is that it has to be detached, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a pre-exist. It's the addition of a sink and kitchen. So it could be built into the house. It could be carved out. It could just be creating a new separate entrance.
Yeah.
It could be. There are a couple homes in Raymond Farms that were ranch, and then they added a second floor.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
an easy fix. Yeah.
right. And so it does not the idea of the zoning for an ADU does not tell you exactly how it has to be laid out, but to be, and people could be floating under the radar currently if it's part of the existing building. Not legal, but they already have an ADU if they have another kitchen in that.
Well,
House.
I looked into it for my house, and what I've been told is as long as you have one entrance that can get you to the whole house, it's a single-family house. Mm-hmm. And you can have facilities, but don't put a stove in.
Right.
So there's a lot you can do right now within the ground rules of the zoning. Mm-hmm. But again, this is something that's not well advertised. You got to think about, I want to do this, and then try to get an architect or somebody to start and say, oh, by the way, you do this, this, and this, but not that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it gets to be that kind of a problem. And the other thing that came up that's surprising is you had a city council meeting a couple of nights ago, and you got talking about this gas line addition
Yep.
to go out Hale Street.
Right.
Well, technically, it's not in your ward, and it's not your specific problem. You mentioned early on the interest in green stuff. And at the same time, I think my counselor, Scott Hausman, we'll have a vote anyway to show our position. This virtual signaling bothers me when, and I think the president, Councilor Julie Flowers, mentioned that, well, what's the implication of being a pain in the drain,
Right.
kind of thing? And what comes out of it, I think, is that the gas company, National Grid, will take all these additional requirements and build them into the project, and they get reimbursed for it out of my gas bill.
Mm-hmm.
So the implications of making all these politically correct adjustments end up costing somebody money, and it's the taxpayers that get caught. And surprisingly, we've had our half hour of fun, and since you mentioned early on you're going to be running for re-election, you like the job so much.
I do.
And as you pointed out, you got a lot more to do.
I do.
So it's your turn to...
Thank you. Yes, as you mentioned, I am Kathleen Feldman, and I plan on running for re-election this coming year to start, hopefully, my third term, if I am so lucky to be re-elected. And I really feel like I'm just getting started in some ways. I have been working hard, but there is a learning curve, and that learning curve was encompassed by a pandemic the first 3 years that I was in office, and I'm really excited to be part of what I think is an exciting new future for the city of Beverly, and I feel deeply about seeing through several of the projects, namely Phase 2, and getting some of these other issues in around Ward 5 that I've come to know very, very well and very detailed. I would really like to be a part of seeing them through to fruition. So I'm Kathleen Feldman. I'm running for re-election, and I would ask for your vote this coming November. And if you have any questions or concerns ever, my phone is on, my inbox is open, so I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Wish you luck.
Thank you.
And if I was in the right ward, I'd even vote for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you understand what the problems are, and you are struggling against some really heavy odds. So it's just going to take time. And like you say, it's a learning curve, and you're pretty far down the curve so far.
And I got a lot of energy. So.
Yeah, that too, yeah. And then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. And we will have some more shows about the state of the city. And as I mentioned every time, at the end of the credits is my email address. And if you've got some questions, comments, or discussion you want to see brought up before the public, send me an email. And if you want to sit at the table, there's room for you here. And again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.